Yeah, I'm Jake Wordis with Meat Art Engines, and been on board now with Meat Art for almost 6 years. Been in the industry for right at 28 years, and I'm the territory manager for Colorado.
Scott?
I'm Scott Rutledge. I'm the sales manager for Meat Art Engine. Been with the company 11 years, and we basically we cover the whole Central Time Zone. So Jake is one of our territory managers that we've asked to join us today, and looking forward to what Jake has to share with everybody.
I'm Ryan Prigge, field sales manager for Meat Art Engine. Been with the company for just over a year now. Been in the industry for over 7. Kind of float all around, help Scott out, and cover most of our territory with our TMs. And I'll pass it over to Matt if he wants to introduce himself.
Matt Schmidt. I do the digital marketing for Meat Art Engine, and just been working here for about 8 months now, and been excited to be part of the industry, and so excited to be part of these podcasts.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Let's just jump right into it. The first topic we're going to talk about today is Oregon chain. There are a couple key and basic terms regarding saw chain that we want to kind of identify and talk about before we get started, so everyone can follow along if you're not well-versed in what saw chain is all about. So there are a number of different parts when we're talking about saw chain. Jake, can you kind of go through what some of the basic parts are for saw chain?
Yeah, I mean, there's really on saw chain, there's like 4 basic components you need to keep in mind when you're talking about saw chain. I actually have a little sample chain here I'm going to hold up in front of the camera. It's a little piece of chain here. So when we're talking about chain, basically we have what's called the driver. If you look at my pen here at the bottom, that's that bottom link, and that actually runs in the bar groove. And then we have our tie strap. If you can see here, let me see, flip this around. There's our tie strap that connects the drivers together, and we have what's called our cutter link. And then there's our rivet. You can see the rivets that actually hold the chain together.
Okay. So when we talk about saw chain and we talk about the gauge and the pitch, can you kind of explain what the gauge is and what the pitch is and what are relevant?
Sure. That's probably the 2 most important things when we're talking about chain is pitch and gauge, because that really is going to identify what we need when we're looking for chain for our saw, or for the dealer, for the customer. And when we discuss gauge, we're talking about the thickness of that driver, and they come in a wide range of gauges and thickness there. And then pitch, okay, is if you look at that chain in front of you, it's any 3 consecutive rivets divided by 2. So we have a wide range of pitches too. So we anywhere from 1/4 inch pitch on up to 3/4 inch pitch chain. And again, that measurement is any 3 consecutive rivets divided by 2.
Okay, awesome. And another important part when you're looking for chain, and I think it depends on the type of job that you're trying to do, is the different type of cutter. Could you help us understand what types of cutters are offered by Oregon, and what they are and what they do, what their purpose is?
Yeah, there actually is a wide range. And, I always reference chain to like vehicles. It's like, we have a wide range of vehicles to kind of tackle everything on the market, whether it's, hauling big stuff to, economy fuel, small cars. So they've kind of done the same thing with chain is with the kind of project that you're doing. So we have what's called a full chisel chain, and I reference this chain here. If you look at the cutting edge, you're going to see it basically it's a square edge. So that'd be a full chisel. We have semi-chisel, we have chipper chain, we have rip chain, we have micro chisel, which is basically a smaller condensed version of a chisel chain. So yeah, there's different types of chisels that we have for each application that the consumer end user is using. So
can you identify some of those applications, like semi-chisel or micro chisel or just chisel? Like what are the uses of those? Right.
So for example, when we're talking about like some of the bigger chamfer chains, that would be like in harvesting. Guys are using big harvester equipment for large saws, and so what it's going to do, it's a really aggressive round tooth that's going to take a big bite out, and that's very forgiving. It sharpens easy. Then you get into like your micro chisels. for a guy that's doing carving. It's a small pitch chain. And with that micro chisel, the smaller it is, it really allows that bar tip to get down really small so they can get in there and carve. So the other thing with chain too, when you're talking about chisel and semi-chisel, is the types of material they're cutting. You're going to find that some are, you want the guy that wants to cut super fast, wants to get the job done. And so he's looking for maybe like a skip tooth full chisel chain that's going to be really aggressive, cut fast. If he's doing dry wood or hardwood, that's what he's looking for. You may want to see somebody that's doing some cutting out in the industry that is dealing with a lot of wet wood or dirty conditions. They want a chain that's more forgiving, so they're going to go with a semi-chisel chain. And so, it's important to understand what type of work you're doing to really find and identify what chain we need for that application. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. As we go through with different pitches, different gauges, different types of cutter, then we kind of really get into the branding in Oregon on, their series offerings such as, Power Cut, Speed Cut Nano, Control Cut, Dura Cut, Advanced Cut. I mean, it goes on and on. Can you kind of go into some of the details on some of those and what, similar to what you just did with the chisel or the type of cutter, kind of go into what series kind of plays in with what type of application it would be used in?
No, and that's great. I mean, and sometimes it can be overwhelming with the variety, but I think one thing that Oregon has done an excellent job at is offering something for everybody. I think they really have perfected something that works well for each application. Like you mentioned some of the names, Power Cut. That's going to be for the logger, the professional, the skilled user that's out there every day making a living. That's going to put these things through rigorous testing use. So that's where and I think it's unique how they use the name Power Cut. So it kind of each category, how they classify their chain, kind of goes somewhat with the name. Then we have the Speed Cut and the Speed Cut Nano. The Speed Cut chain is really interesting because that's fairly new. And what they've done is they've really brought that gauge down, made it it's a thinner, narrow kerf, longer cutter tooth. And this is going to make this saw perform at its maximum capabilities. So there's a lot of lower CC saws out there on the market today, like a lot of your cordless and lower CC gas powered. And so, sometimes the factory chain that comes on there is basically just standard chain. And with this Speed Cut and Speed Cut Nano does, it really maximizes the performance of the saw. So they get a really fast cut in the wood. So it performs very well. Yeah, we also have VersaCut chain, which, it has a wide range of chains for the VersaCut, anywhere from 50 to 100 cc. And these can be used for professionals, performance, and it's designed for, durability, versatility out in the field. We have Control Cut by Oregon. The Control Cut chain, basically, it's going to have bumper drivers. Some of them will have bumper straps. This helps reduce kickback, which basically is the safety concern for, out in the industry, whether it's an end user, more of the homeowner use. You'll see the safety chain referred to as low kickback chain. We also have DuraCut chain, which is very durable chain. It's made with heavier material. It's stronger chain. It's more forgiving on the framework of the chain. So typically you get a lot longer use on the DuraCut chain. Oregon also provides sculpting chain for guys that do carving. You've seen on TV, or if you've maybe seen it some expos where guys do tree carving in wood, and they look for a narrow, small tip bar. So they need a chain that's kind of a micro chisel, narrow kerf that's designed to go in there and chip away in these small areas. And so that's where you see some of the sculptor chain. Oregon provides rip cut chain for the sawmills, the professional loggers that are ripping, large sections of wood, large sections of material. So it's a heavy, it doesn't have a really steep angle on the tooth. It's more of a flat angle. And so it really takes out a big chip, but it gives a smooth, clean cut on a board. Then you have like your advanced cut chain for your homeowners. This is kind of like, smaller CC saws, anywhere from like 38 CC and below. Obviously, they offer some for the higher CCs, but it's a certain market that is not your everyday cutter, just a weekend warrior, I call it. And the Advanced Cut is a really good chain. Oregon even has a Power Sharp system for consumers where you can actually buy a bar and chain kit that goes on your saw, where the customer can actually sharpen the chain while it's on the saw. So they really developed a lot of nice technology out there that kind of just meets the whole variety of customers out there doing, whether you're a home weekend warrior farmer all the way up to the commercial guy, doing large cutting.
Okay.
So.
Well, you kind of hit on it a little bit, Jake, and some of the industry terminology and talk is safety chain and professional chain. Can you just kind of go a little bit into what safety chain is and what professional chain is?
Yeah, so safety chain really is designed to reduce kickback. Kickback is a term that we talk about because when you're cutting with a saw, you've got something turning 10,000 RPM plus, and you're cutting into whether it's a small piece of wood or a large piece of wood. There's the potential for the saw chain to kick. Basically, what it does, it bites, catches wrong, and it makes that bar come back up towards you. So it's dangerous. Oregon's put a lot of time and engineering and technology into reducing the amount of kickback on certain chains. So, if you get a homeowner who's like, hey, I don't do this all the time, but I want something that's going to be safe
And I
for
want all
me.
my fingers by the end of the day.
Yep, exactly. Want to, go see my family at night. So, no, they offer that reduced kickback chain, and it does help reduce the amount of kickback when cutting. Now, your
What about
professional
professional?
chain, like you're talking about on the professional, it's not going to have the safety components on there, because what you find is some of that stuff can slow the chain down. So these guys want aggressive. They want something with less restriction, efficiency, speed, performance, and that's where you get into your, where you have maybe a skip sequence chain where the cutter tooth is every other type, where you'll go 2 tie straps and a cutter tooth, full chisel chain, and it's really designed for performance. Now, with those chains, there's always the chance of kickback. So it has to be an experienced user using the, that professional grade chain. I wouldn't recommend it for the homeowner.
Okay, perfect. So also when we get into Oregon, we just talked about the wide variety of pitch, gauge, different cutter types, and then we go into their different series of chain. Again, it's a little confusing and overwhelming for somebody that doesn't understand what they're looking for and what they need. So, for example, some of the part numbers with Oregon are 72 EXL 084G. So can you kind of break down, the part number means something, and if you can help them break down what that means, can you kind of go through a part number and say the 72 means this, the EXL means this, to give a better understanding to somebody that's looking for chain or trying to figure out what chain works for what application?
Right. And, you're right. There is a lot to chain. And, I always recommend people that if you're not sure, get with your territory manager, look in the catalog, even the Oregon site. It gives a really nice chart on the Oregon product site where you can go in there and narrow down what is right for my application and so on, identifying what that chain is. So, again, the 2 most important things when we talk about chain is pitch and gauge. So that's the 2 things we have to look at. And Oregon's done a pretty good job putting those numbers together. And again, it's one of those things where understanding those numbers, what each one means. The first 2 numbers you see on Oregon chain are going to identify what the pitch and gauge are. So the number you rattled off, I think, was a 72 EXL 084G. Is that correct?
Correct.
So 72 would be a 3/8 pitch, 50 gauge chain. Okay, with that number 72, that's how we identify it. The other numbers are going to identify the type of chain that it is, whether it's professional use or whether it's low kickback chain. And then the last digits, like the 084G, would be 84 driver lengths. G meaning a loop. Oregon, you can also buy in rolls of 25 or 100 foot rolls, and that would be a 025U. Would be for a 25 foot roll, and then if we had 0 or 100U would be a 100 foot roll. Um,
All right. Scott's been a little quiet, so this last question is going to go to Jake and Scott. What makes Jake? I'll ask you first. What makes Oregon chain different than other chain?
You know, I've been in the industry for 28 years, and I have to say, they always amaze me with the technology. I've actually had a chance to tour the factory at Oregon where they actually make the chain. You know, when you ask that question, you know, what separates them? They're the foundation of the very chain that we know today. So, you know, Oregon was the one who developed, you know, back in 1947, they developed the very chain that we use today. The type of chisels, the cutters, and they're a worldwide company. Everybody in the industry today follows the foundation that Oregon started with chain. And they continue to improve and develop and make it just better. Every year it just seems to improve. And so I think that's what separates them from anybody else in the industry is just the length. And again, they're the foundation of chain itself that we know today.
Yeah. Scott, what about you?
I would echo that. I would say that Oregon is probably the leader by far when it comes to chainsaw chain. You know, obviously back in 1947, they were the ones that, you know, that kind of invented chainsaw chain. And, you know, they've taken it from there and they provide a lot of OEMs, their chain, you know, as well as sell independently, you know, their brand, the Oregon brand, but, you know, they are definitely the leader in the industry when it comes to it. And, you know, others, as Jake said, others follow kind of their lead as to when they come out with a new chain, you know, everybody takes notice. And, you know, they've done a tremendous job branding themselves and, you know, helping everybody with their needs. I think Jake mentioned that earlier in the podcast that, you know, there's not a chain out there that wouldn't apply for an application. So they've done a great job of covering the overall basis for everybody. One question though that I have, and I'll throw this at Jake. Jake, how important is it for the depth gauge to be correct?
Oh, it's vital. You know, when we're talking about the depth gauge, I always use my hands as a reference. You know, this is your depth gauge, okay, and this is your cutter. Let's just say, you know, your cutter is going to obviously be a little higher because we have to decide how much chip we want to take off at one time. If this depth gauge height is incorrect, let's say you start to sharpen your chain. As you sharpen your chain, it wears back, okay, because it's on an angle on that cutting edge. Okay. Now, as it wears back, what happens? Your bumper's hitting, but we're not taking a bite out. So immediately you start going to powder. That's a good indication. Hey, I need to sharpen my chain, but I also need to bring that depth gauge down. You know, if I'm even here, I need to sharpen that depth gauge down. But there is a maximum that you can actually take off too much. If you have too much bite, what's that going to do? You can increase kickback. It's going to basically you're going to lose the power in the saw, the efficiency of the cut. So it's really important on depth gauges.
So as a novice cutter, you know, somebody that does not cut a lot, why? I guess my question would be, well, if I want that cutter to get as much wood as possible, why wouldn't I just grind that bumper all the way down? Why is that there? What's it there for?
It's there to protect him. It's there to protect him.
Exactly.
We just want to make sure that he can go back to his family at the end of the day when he's done cutting. So it's there as a safety mechanism for the customer. So there's other components too that we didn't kind of talk about that Oregon has perfected with chain. You know, and it goes back to the way they've done the different styles of chain, but you know, they have a Lubritech design technology which provides lubrication up to from the driver all the way up to the rivets and the different components of the chain. So you know, lubrication is critical on chain to the framework and making the chain last. They also, if you've noticed on Oregon chain, they use a chromoly, chroming process and a bluing process on the chain, which that chrome, you know, a lot of the Oregon chain now, the way it's it's laser cut at the factory. It's sharper out of the box. The chroming process allows it to hold that edge over a longer period of time. And then the bluing, if you ever notice the blue color on the chain, that's like a corrosion inhibitor, so it keeps that chain from corroding. Guys are out there in the field, they get them wet, they throw them in the back of their truck. That bluing process helps protect that chain. So there's a lot of little components that Oregon does on their chain that really, like I said, over the years, the technology just keeps getting better. If you look at some of their cutter teeth, on the very back side of the cutter tooth, you'll see wear indicators to kind of let you know, hey, I'm back to that point. I need to go get another chain. This chain, I've sharpened it too far back. I'm at that wear distance where it's time to go get another chain. So no, they've really perfected a lot of the chain that you see on the market today.
Well, I want to thank you, Jake, for taking some time out to talk about chain. If anyone watching this is interested in more information, please comment below. We would also like to do a podcast with Oregon themselves to go into greater detail. That podcast would be a little bit longer. If you do have interest in seeing something like that, go ahead and comment below. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, put those comments in there. We'll monitor that. Other than that, did anyone else have anything to add?
I found this stat on Google. It says that over 25,000 chainsaw-related injuries annually. So it just shows you with having the right type of chain can prevent that, which would help with lower the workers' comp and people with injuries. So it just shows the importance of having a great chain.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all for watching. Thank you for joining us, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks.